The Zergling is of course a D tier counter to the carrier, doesn't have anti-air. Next we have the Hydralisk, and the Hydralisk is okay, but it's not strong against the carrier. So the Hydra has an explosive attack, which is good against the carrier because explosive deals 100% damage against large targets like the carrier. And the Hydra is generally a cheap and supply efficient unit. But the carrier has 4 armor, and this means that the Hydralisk with its 10 damage attack just will deal 6 damage against the carrier, which is not a lot. And the Hydra has much shorter range. It has range 4 upgradable to 5, and the carrier has a range of 8 with a leash range of 12. So overall, I would say the Hydra is usable against the carrier, but it is pretty mediocre, so I'll put it into B tier. The Lurker, of course, also is a D tier counter to the carrier. It doesn't have anti-air. And next we have the Mutalisk. And the Muta is also very bad. So the Muta has an attack with 9 damage. And as I mentioned, the carrier has 4 armor. So the Mutalisk deals very little damage to the carrier. Another thing is Mutalisks, they have pretty little HP for how much they cost. They die pretty quickly. And the Mutalisk just has a range of 3. And the carrier has a range of 8, so the Mutalisk deals very little damage. Sometimes it's going even to be killed before it can attack the carrier, so I would put it into C tier. At least it has an anti-air attack. And next we have the Scourge, and the Scourge of course is an S tier against the carrier. So the Scourge deals 110 damage, so having 4 armor on the carrier doesn't do a lot against this high of a damage. Number 2, Scourges can be extremely cost efficient because you need 5 Scourges to kill 1 carrier, and 5 Scourges, they cost only I think 250 resources, so they just cost a fraction of the carrier. It can be extremely cost efficient. And another reason is the carrier interceptors are pretty slow at reacting. So that is, if a carrier attacks, the interceptors are going to like swarm out before they will actually attack the target. And this will give your Scourge the time they need to hit the carrier. Okay, so the Scourge is an S tier counter against the carrier. And next we have the Queen. The Queen is pretty weak. Number 1, the Parasite spell is just a scouting spell, is not a counter. Number 2, the Spawn Broodling spell doesn't do anything against the carrier because it only targets ground targets. Number 3, the Ensnare can be pretty okay. So Ensnare reduces the movement speed and the fire frequency of units in an area of effect. And if you use the Ensnare against a large cloud of interceptors, this will reduce the damage output of the carrier by a significant amount, but still I think the Queen is not really strong. It's a C, I think. And next we have the Defiler, and the Defiler is a spellcaster, but it is extremely strong against the carrier for 2 reasons. So number 1, Dark Swarm makes ground units under the Dark Swarm invulnerable to the carrier attack, which is very strong. And number 2, the Plague is also very good because the Plague removes up to 250 HP from a target over 25 seconds. And this is very good against the carrier. So the carrier has 300 HP with 4 armor. And because of the armor, it is really hard to get rid of these HP. But after you use 1 Plague, the carrier just has 50 HP left with 4 armor, and that makes destroying the carrier a lot more easier for your other units like Hydralisks. So all in all, I would say that the Defiler is an S tier counter to the carrier. And next we have the Infested Terran. That's a D, of course, because it doesn't have an anti-air attack. The Overlord also, it doesn't have an attack, and we also don't need attraction against the carrier. And next we have this guy here, the Devourer. That's an interesting one. So number 1, the Devourer has 2 armor, which is nice because each carrier attack just deals 6 damage. So the Devourer is pretty tanky. Number 2, the Devourer has an attack of 25 explosive damage. And that's also pretty good against the carrier, because the 4 carrier armor don't really do a lot against an attack of 25. But the Devourer attacks extremely slowly. It has an attack cooldown of 4, which means it has a DPS of 6, so it's really terrible DPS. But then again, the Acid Spore debuff of the Devourer can be good, because Acid Spores applies a debuff in an area of effect, and this debuff will reduce the enemy's armor by 1. So, for example, if you have a carrier with 4 base armor and you shoot 4 times with a Devourer on this carrier, then the carrier will have an armor of 0 because of the Acid Spores debuff. But the Devourer is really bad at actually killing the carrier because it has so little DPS, but it is a good support unit, especially when you pair it up with stuff like Hydralisks. So it is a decent support unit. I'll place it into B tier. This guy here, the Guardian, doesn't have anti-air. We'll put it into D tier. Same applies to the Ultralisk. And then we have the Spore Colony. And the Spore Colony is a mixed one. So number 1, the Spore Colony has a range of 7, like all defensive units. And the carrier has a range of 8. So the Spore will never be able to fire at the carrier directly. The only thing the Spore is going to do is to fire at the interceptors. But the Spore is actually not really good at killing interceptors, because the Spore is a building that is pretty tanky. It has 400 HP. It is the most tanky defense building, but it doesn't really have high DPS. So the DPS of the Spore is 23. And for comparison, 1 Stim Marine has a DPS of 20. So it's just a little bit more DPS than 1 Stim Marine. So it's not a strong counter to the carrier. It has shorter range than the carrier, and it's not a high DPS unit, so it's a C tier. And then we have the Sunken Colony. Doesn't have an anti-air attack. It's a D tier, of course. Alright, dudes. Thanks for watching.